The trap had sprung sometime during the night. Jun Park checked his monitoring equipment again, frowning at the unusual readings. As a former Special Forces operative now working for the Wildlife Containment Division, he'd seen his share of strange creatures, but nothing like this. "What the hell?" he muttered, approaching the reinforced containment chamber carefully. The trap had been set for the unidentified predators that had been terrorizing the remote mountain region. Instead, he found himself staring at three humanoid females with iridescent skin that seemed to pulse with inner light. One of them pressed her hand against the transparent barrier, her eyes, entirely silver with no visible pupils, fixed on him. Suddenly, a voice echoed in his mind. Asterisk, please. Help us. We are not what they told you to hunt. Asterisk. Jun stumbled backward, nearly dropping his tablet. The voice had come from inside his head, not through his ears. He looked around wildly, making sure no one else was present at the remote trap site. Did you just? He couldn't finish the sentence, unsure if he was losing his mind. Asterisk, yes. We speak through thoughts. Please listen. We mean no harm. Asterisk, the tallest of the three alien females, nodded slowly, her movements graceful despite her obvious fear. Jun took a deep breath and approached the trap again. The containment chamber was meant for large predatory animals, built with reinforced transparent panels that allowed researchers to observe captured specimens. The three beings inside looked remarkably humanoid, but with clear differences that marked them as something not of Earth. Their skin shimmered with subtle patterns of light that seemed to flow beneath the surface. Their eyes were large and completely silver, reflecting the morning light like mirrors. They stood on two legs and had two arms, but their fingers were longer, with an extra joint that gave them unusual dexterity. What are you? Jun asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The tallest one communicated again. Asterisk. Your people would call us luminary. We are refugees, escaped prisoners. The hunters chase us. Asterisk. Jun checked his tablet, making sure the recording equipment was functioning. His bosses at Wildlife Containment would never believe this without evidence. Asterisk, please, do not alert others to our presence. Asterisk, the second alien said, her mental voice higher, more urgent. Asterisk, those who hunt us have infiltrated your world. They wear human faces. Asterisk. That's impossible, Jun said, but his military training made him hesitate. He'd been briefed about unusual incidents in the region, told only that dangerous predators needed to be contained. Nothing about aliens or infiltrators. The third luminary, smaller than the others with markings that glowed a soft blue, stepped forward. Asterisk. May we show you? It is easier to understand through images than words. Asterisk. Jun hesitated. Every protocol he'd been taught said to report immediately, secure the site, and wait for the extraction team. But something in the silver eyes watching him stirred his compassion. These weren't animals. They were intelligent beings, and they were afraid. Show me, he finally said. The small one raised her hand, palm facing the barrier. Asterisk, place your hand against mine, through the barrier. Asterisk. Jun slowly raised his hand and pressed it against the transparent panel, directly opposite the alien's glowing palm. Immediately, his mind filled with visions. He saw a beautiful world with 2 moons and vast cities made of crystalline structures. He watched as massive ships darkened the skies, and reptilian beings with advanced weapons rounded up the luminary. He felt the fear, the pain of separation as families were torn apart, the luminary loaded into holding cells on massive transport ships. He witnessed the small groups escape, their desperate flight across space in a stolen shuttle, the crash landing on Earth, and their weeks of hiding in remote wilderness areas before his trap had caught them. When the connection broke, Jun found himself on his knees, tears streaming down his face. The emotions had been overwhelming, the terror and loss too real to doubt. Those things that have been attacking the villages, they're not you, he realized aloud. Asterisk, no. Asterisk, the tallest confirmed. Asterisk. They are the hunters. The Drakari. They can assume human form for short periods. They search for us because we escaped. We are valuable to them. Asterisk. June checked his watch. The extraction team would expect his check-in soon. If he didn't report, they'd send someone to investigate. If he did report what he'd found, he couldn't be sure what would happen to these beings. Why were you valuable to them? He asked, needing to understand more before making any decisions. The second luminary stepped forward. Asterisk, our species has abilities they covet. We can heal with touch. We can share knowledge instantly. Some can see possible futures. The Drakari use us as tools, as living technology. Asterisk. And these Drakari are here. On Earth. Asterisk, yes. They followed our escape pod. There are only a few, but they are dangerous. They kill without hesitation. Asterisk, the smallest one shuddered, her glow dimming slightly. June's mind raced. The attacks on remote villages, the unusual wounds on livestock, and the few human victims, the strange tracks that had prompted the Wildlife Containment Division to set traps in the first place. It all made a terrible kind of sense if viewed through this new lens. His radio crackled. Base to park. Check-in time. Report status. Jun picked up the radio, his hand trembling slightly. 3 pairs of silver eyes watched him, filled with fear and hope. Park to base. Trap 4 is empty. No signs of activity. Continuing my rounds. He put the radio down and approached the containment controls. The luminary watched him carefully. I'm going to release you, he said quietly. But you need to tell me everything about these hunters. If they're as dangerous as you say, and they're responsible for the attacks, I need to know how to fight them. Asterisk, release us, and we will help you. Asterisk, the tallest promised. Asterisk, my name is Mina. These are my sisters, Sue and Yuna. We were scholars before we became fugitives. Asterisk. June entered his access code, and the containment barrier slid open with a soft hiss. The 3 luminaries stepped out cautiously, their bare feet making no sound on the forest floor. Mina approached him and slowly raised her hand. Asterisk. May I? Asterisk. June nodded, and she placed her palm against his forehead. Immediately, knowledge flowed into his mind. Images of Drakari physiology, their weaknesses, their technology, their hunting patterns. When she pulled her hand away, June staggered, his mind reeling from the information overload. My cabin is 3 kilometers north, he said, finding his voice. We need to get you somewhere safe while I figure out what to do next. As they moved through the forest, June realized he had just violated every protocol in the book. He had lied to his superiors, released unknown entities, and was now harboring them. But after what he'd seen, what they'd shown him, he couldn't bring himself to regret it. If what the luminary had shared was true, Earth was facing a threat it didn't even know existed. And these 3 refugees might be humanity's only warning. You're called the Starlight People, June asked, setting down a bowl of soup for Mina, the one who seemed to be their leader. Luminary is how your tongue would say it, she replied, her voice still resonating directly in his thoughts. Our world fell to the hunters 3 cycles ago. We were cargo. Sue, the smallest of the 3, trembled. They will never stop searching for us. Your people's traps meant for animals caught us instead. Yuna, the 3rd alien, touched June's hand gently. The contact sent images flooding into his mind, massive ships, enslaved beings, and a desperate escape. If I report this, you'll be taken to a government facility, June said quietly. I don't think that ends well for anyone. The small cabin creaked as wind pushed against its wooden walls. Rain had started to fall, drumming steadily on the roof. June's remote outpost, built for his work with the Wildlife Containment Division, had never felt so crowded. 3 alien refugees sat around his small table, their skin casting soft light across the room's dim interior. Mina sipped the soup carefully. Though she didn't need human food, the warm liquid seemed to comfort her. Your kindness is unexpected. The Drakari told us humans were violent primitives who would tear us apart for study. Some might, June admitted, thinking of certain government agencies. That's why I haven't reported finding you. He glanced at his silent radio. By now, the central office would be wondering why he hadn't checked in with more details. His simple report about empty traps would buy him a day at most before someone came to investigate. I need to understand more about these Drakari, Jun said. You showed me glimpses, but I need details if I'm going to help you. Yuna's light pulsed with what seemed like anxiety. They looked like large reptiles in their true form. Scaled skin, vertical pupils, much stronger than humans. But they can shift, take on other appearances. Like humans, Jun asked. Yes, Minna confirmed. They cannot hold the form for long, perhaps 6 of your hours. It causes them pain, but it allows them to infiltrate. Sue moved to the cabin's single window, peering out at the rainy forest. They will have noticed the trap was activated. They monitor your human systems. They have for some time. June felt a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. How many of them are there? We believe 8 came to your world in pursuit of us, Minna said. They need only a small hunting party. They are confident in their abilities. The soup sat forgotten as June processed this information. And what exactly can you do? You mentioned healing and knowledge transfer. Minna hesitated, then nodded to her companions. It is best to show you. Sue approached, her light glowing blue. Your hand, please. June extended his hand, and Sue took it between her smaller ones. Immediately, warmth spread up his arm. An old scar from his military days, a knife wound that had never properly healed, began to tingle. Before his eyes, the jagged mark faded until nothing remained but smooth skin. Fats, incredible, he whispered, flexing his previously stiff fingers. Yuna's gift is different, Minna explained. She can see connections, paths between events that might happen. Not exactly your future, but possibilities. Yuna approached hesitantly. May I? At June's nod, she placed her fingertips against his temples. This time, instead of memories, he saw fragmented images of things that hadn't happened yet. Himself running through the forest, a government facility with strange lights, the flash of weapons, and a dark shape with reflective eyes lurking near human homes. When the connection broke, Jun gasped for breath. Was that a warning? Possibilities only, Yuna said softly. The brightest path shows us working together. The darkest. She didn't finish. June paced the small cabin, military training kicking in. We need a plan. A safe place. Supplies. He paused, looking at the 3 aliens. And we need to figure out who in my organization might actually be Drakari. Mina's expression grew serious. Your superior, the one called Director Han, we glimpsed him when we were first brought to your world. He was speaking with one who was not human. June froze. Director Han had personally assigned him to this area, insisted on these new traps with their unusual design. Are you saying my boss is working with aliens? Perhaps not knowingly, Minna replied. The Drakari are cunning. They may present themselves as allies or researchers with special interest. Outside, a branch snapped. All 4 of them tensed. June moved silently to the window, peering through the rain-streaked glass. A figure moved between the trees, human-shaped but moving with unnatural fluidity. They're here, he whispered. Sue's light dimmed with fear. How did they find us so quickly? June checked his equipment, suddenly suspicious. His tablet, his radio, even his wildlife division uniform with its tracking chip for emergency situations. Any of these could have led the hunters right to them. We need to go. Now. June grabbed his emergency pack, always ready by the door, and a hunting rifle from the wall. Is there anything that can hurt them? Their shifted form is vulnerable, Minna explained quickly as they moved toward the back door. When they appear human, they can be injured like humans. In their true form, their throat scales are softer. June nodded, mentally noting the information. There's an old mining tunnel system 2 kilometers east. We might lose them there. As they slipped out the back door into the rain, Jun made a decision that fully broke every protocol he'd ever followed. He removed his division-issued locator and crushed it under his boot. "Stay close," he whispered to the 3 glowing figures, "and try to dim your light if you can." The luminary concentrated, and their glow reduced to a faint shimmer barely visible through their wet clothing, items Jun had hastily provided from his own supplies. They moved through the forest as quietly as possible, rain providing cover for small sounds. Twice they froze as shapes moved in the darkness, too fluid to be human, too purposeful to be animals. "Why are they so determined to recapture you specifically?" June asked as they paused behind a fallen tree. Minna hesitated before answering. "We were not merely cargo. We were specimens. Special ones." "What she means," Yuna added, "is that we were being taken to their homeworld as examples of valuable genetic material. Our abilities are stronger than most luminary." And Sue added softly, "We know things. Our father was a keeper of ancient knowledge. Before we were taken, he transferred sensitive information to us. Information about Drakari weaknesses, their empire's structure. Information they would kill to keep secret." June processed this new information as they continued moving. These weren't just random fugitives. They were high-value targets with strategic intelligence, precisely the kind of asset that would have both aliens and humans fighting to control. As they neared the abandoned mine entrance, Jun made another decision that went against everything in his training. "When we get to safety," he said quietly, "I want you to show me everything you know about the Drakari. Not just fragments. Everything." Minna studied him with her luminous silver eyes. That amount of information transfer could be overwhelming for a human mind. "I'll risk it," Jun replied firmly. "If these hunters are on Earth, if they're infiltrating our systems, someone needs to know how to fight them. Someone they don't already know about." As they slipped into the dark mouth of the mine, leaving the rain behind, Jun knew he had crossed a line. He was no longer just breaking protocol. He was committing to a fight he hadn't known existed until today. Behind them, in the forest, a high inhuman sound cut through the rainfall. Not quite a howl, not quite a scream. Something else entirely. "They found your cabin," Minna whispered. "And they know you've chosen to help us." June checked his rifle, though he wondered how effective it would be against whatever was hunting them. "Then we better make sure that choice was worth it. Show me how to fight them." In the darkness of the mine, 3 pairs of silver eyes glowed with newfound hope. "They're coming," Yuna whispered, her luminescent markings dimming with fear. Jun peered through his binoculars at the approaching vehicles. Government issue, but something seemed off about the agents exiting them. "Those aren't just government forces," Minna said, her eyes widening. "The ones in the black suits, they're not human. They're hunters wearing human disguises." Later that night, when one of the disguised hunters ambushed them, Jun took a deep slash across his chest. As he collapsed, Sue placed her glowing hands over his wound. The pain dissolved as torn flesh knit together under her touch. "Why save me?" he gasped. "Because," she said simply, "you saw us as people, not monsters." 3 days had passed since they fled into the abandoned mining complex. The maze of tunnels had provided temporary safety, but June knew it wouldn't last. The old miners' quarters they now occupied had running water from an underground spring, but little else in terms of comfort. Still, it was defensible, with only 2 main entrances to monitor. June winced as he touched his chest. The wound had healed completely thanks to Sue's abilities, but the memory of pain remained fresh. The Drakari hunter had moved faster than any human, its clawed hand cutting through his tactical vest as if it were paper. "How much longer can they maintain human form?" June asked, checking the makeshift barriers they had constructed at the tunnel entrance. Minna, who stood watch by a small opening in the rock wall, turned to him. The strain grows greater with each passing hour. Soon they will be forced to revert. Good, Jones said grimly. Easier to spot that way. The knowledge transfer he had received from the luminary had been intense, almost too much for his mind to handle. But now he understood what they were facing. The Drakari were not just hunters. They were an empire that spread across multiple star systems, collecting and exploiting useful species. Earth was simply their newest hunting ground, one they intended to assess for potential value. Sue approached with a small container of water. You should drink. Your body still needs to recover strength. June accepted the water gratefully. What I don't understand is why they sent so few hunters for something they consider so valuable. Pride, Eunice said from where she sat cross-legged on the floor, her eyes closed in concentration as she monitored possible futures. They believe themselves superior to all other species. Sending a large force would suggest we pose a significant threat. Their mistake, Jun muttered. His radio crackled suddenly, making them all jump. He had kept it only to monitor communications, maintaining silence himself. Park, this is Director Han. We know you're in the mining complex. We've tracked unusual energy signatures. Whatever you found in that trap, it needs to be contained. Respond immediately. June exchanged glances with Mina. They had expected this. The thermal imaging equipment the Wildlife Containment Division used would eventually detect the luminary's unique energy signature. Don't answer, Mina advised. It could be a Drakari using voice modification. June nodded, but his training made him uneasy. If there were actual humans out there, colleagues who didn't understand what they were walking into, they could be in danger. Yuna's eyes suddenly snapped open, glowing brighter than before. They're separating. 3 approach from the east tunnel, 2 from the west. They plan to trap us between them. Time to implement our plan, Jun said, reaching for the backpack containing supplies he had gathered. Over the past days, as Sue had healed his wound, they had devised a strategy. The luminary had shared knowledge of Drakari weaknesses, and Jun had combined this with his military expertise. Now, instead of merely running, they would set a trap of their own. Remember, he told the 3 aliens as they gathered their few possessions, we need to separate the real humans from the Drakari. No unnecessary casualties. Mina nodded solemnly. We value all life, even after what has been done to our people. They moved quickly through the tunnels, setting up the traps they had prepared. June had fashioned crude but effective devices using mining equipment and his limited supplies. The luminary added their own elements, small crystals that would react to Drakari biology in ways their human disguises couldn't mask. In position, June whispered into a small communicator he had given to Yuna, who had taken a different route with Sue. The plan required them to split up temporarily. We're ready, came Yuna's soft reply. Be careful, June. He smiled grimly. In just a few days, these aliens had shown more concern for his welfare than many humans he had known for years. The first explosion echoed through the tunnels, a controlled blast designed to collapse a small section of the eastern passage. Not enough to cause serious injury, but enough to create confusion and separate the approaching forces. Now, Mina, Jun said. Mina closed her eyes, her luminescent markings glowing brighter. As a scholar on her world, she had studied communications. Now she projected a powerful telepathic message targeted specifically at the human minds in the vicinity. Asterisk, the beings you hunt are not hostile. The creatures with you are not human. They will shed their disguises soon. Watch for the signs. Vertical pupils, scaled skin at the neck, movements too fluid for human joints. Asterisk. June couldn't hear the message himself, but he could see its effect as Mina's energy pulsed outward. Moments later, his radio crackled with confused chatter. Did you hear that? In my head. Director Han, what's happening? Then, a different voice, cold and precise. Ignore the telepathic interference. It's a defensive mechanism. Proceed with capture protocols. June smiled grimly. That's our Drakari, trying to maintain control. The second part of their plan activated when footsteps approached their position. June triggered another trap, this one releasing a combination of chemicals that Minna had assured him would irritate Drakari's skin, forcing their transformation. A scream echoed through the tunnel, not human at all, but a high-pitched sound that made June's teeth ache. Contact, he whispered into the communicator. East tunnel transformation confirmed. He peered around the corner to see a remarkable sight. Two human agents were backing away from their companion, whose skin was rippling, human features melting away to reveal scaled, reptilian skin and vertical slit eyes. The disguise was failing. "What the hell is that?" one of the human agents shouted, raising his weapon. The Drakari, its cover blown, moved with frightening speed. It struck one agent, sending him flying against the tunnel wall. But before it could attack the second, a brilliant flash of blue light erupted from further down the tunnel. Sue and Yuna had activated their trap. A concentrated burst of energy that the luminary had assured June would temporarily paralyze a Drakari's nervous system. The reptilian creature froze, its body contorting in pain. The remaining human agents stared in shock, weapon trained on the alien, but clearly unsure what he was seeing. June stepped out, hands raised. "Wildlife Containment Agent Park. That thing is not human. There are more of them." The agent swung his weapon toward June. "Park, you're the one who went to Ark. Director Han said you were compromised." "Han is one of them," June said firmly, "or working with them. These creatures hunt a different species, refugees who came here seeking safety." As if on cue, Minna stepped into view, her natural glow softly illuminating the tunnel. The agent's eyes widened. "What the hell is going on?" he demanded. "A first contact situation gone very wrong," Jun said simply. "And right now, we need to work together or more people will die." From the west tunnel, gunfire erupted, followed by another inhuman scream. The plan was working on both fronts. The Drakari were being exposed. Suddenly, Director Han's voice came through all their radios. "All units withdraw immediately. Park has released dangerous extraterrestrial biological entities. Lethal force is authorized." The agent looked from June to Minna, then to the frozen Drakari, clearly torn. "Agent Kim," June said, recognizing the younger man. "Look at that thing. Does it look like anything from Earth? They've been infiltrating us, using us to hunt these others." He gestured to Minna. "They heal. They communicate with thoughts. They've been running for their lives." Agent Kim stared at the Drakari, its scaled body now fully revealed. "Han said we were hunting dangerous animals. You were hunting what they wanted you to hunt," Minna said gently, her mental voice likely reaching Kim for the first time. "We were to be recaptured or killed, but your people were never meant to know the truth." A moment of tense silence passed before Kim lowered his weapon slightly. "Explain everything now." As Sue and Yuna rejoined them, bringing news that the Western Drakari had also been exposed, Jun felt a shift in the balance of power. For the first time since finding the luminary, they weren't simply running. The hunters had become the hunted. The abandoned mine offered little comfort but good defensive positions. June checked his limited ammunition one last time. "They call themselves the Drakari," Minna explained as they prepared. "They collect species with unique abilities. Our kind can heal, communicate without words, and share knowledge through touch." When the hunters finally cornered them, their leader shed his human disguise, revealing scaled skin and reptilian features. "Return our property, human," the creature hissed at June. "These females contain genetic sequences worth more than your entire planet." June's trap, using the luminary's abilities to amplify a captured hunter's distress signal, worked perfectly. When military reinforcements arrived, they found themselves in the middle of an alien standoff. The deepest chamber of the abandoned mine had become their last stand. Water dripped from the rocky ceiling, creating small puddles on the uneven floor. The air smelled of damp stone and rust from old mining equipment. Agent Kim and the two other human agents who had sided with June helped set up barriers using overturned carts and collapsed support beams. 6 hours since we sent the signal, Kim said, checking his watch. If the military received it, they should be here soon. June nodded, not taking his eyes off the main tunnel entrance. The distress signal had been their biggest gamble. Using a captured Dracarys communication device, they had broadcast evidence of the alien presence directly to military channels, bypassing the potentially compromised Wildlife Containment Division. "They're moving again," Yuna warned, her silver eyes glowing brighter as she monitored the approaching threat through her unique abilities. 7 Dracari, all in true form now. They've abandoned their human disguises completely. "And Director Han?" June asked. "Leading them," Yuna confirmed grimly. "He is different. The connection between him and the Dracari is unusual." Sue, who had been helping the injured human agent, looked up with concern. "He may be what our people call a bridge, a being partially transformed to serve as a link between species. Not fully Dracari, but no longer fully human." The revelation sent a chill through the group. June had worked under Han for 3 years, never suspecting anything unusual about the stern, demanding director. How long had the infiltration been in progress? How many other humans had been compromised? Everyone remembered the plan, Jum said, checking his rifle one final time. "We need at least 1 Dracari alive for evidence, but don't take unnecessary risks. Their reflexes are faster than ours, and their skin is tough except at the throat and joints." The human agents nodded nervously. None of them had been trained for this kind of encounter. Their wildlife containment roles typically involved tracking unusual animal species, not fighting alien invaders. "They're here," Minna said quietly, her luminescent patterns pulsing with tension. The sound of claws scraping against stone echoed through the tunnel. Then came the distinctive hissing communication of the Dracari, a language that sounded like a mixture of clicks and serpentine sounds. Jum gave the signal, and they implemented the first part of their defense. Sue and Yuna combined their abilities, creating a momentary burst of intense light that flooded the tunnel. The Dracari, with their sensitive eyes, shrieked in pain. In that moment of confusion, Jum and Kim opened fire, aiming carefully at the tunnel entrance where shadows moved. 2 Dracari fell, green fluid spurting from their wounds, but the others recovered quickly, charging forward with frightening speed. "Hold position," June shouted as the first Dracari leaped over their barricade. The creature was terrifying in its true form, nearly 7 feet tall, with powerful limbs covered in iridescent scales. Its face was vaguely reptilian, but with an intelligence in its vertical pupil eyes that no Earth reptile possessed. Curved claws extended from its fingers, sharp enough to slice through metal. Agent Lee fired directly at the creature's chest, but the bullets seemed to cause only minor damage. The Dracari swiped at him, its claws tearing through his tactical vest. Before it could strike again, Minna projected a concentrated mental blast, a technique she had been reluctant to use until now. The Dracari stumbled, clutching its head in pain. June took the opportunity to fire directly at its exposed throat. The creature collapsed, gurgling as green fluid poured from the wound. "Behind us," Kim shouted. 2 more Dracari had somehow circled around, entering through a smaller tunnel they hadn't properly secured. One of them grabbed Sue, lifting her off the ground. Her blue light flared in panic as she struggled in its grip. Yuna rushed forward, touching the creature's arm. The contact allowed her to project images directly into the Dracari's mind, overwhelming its senses with disorienting visions. Its grip loosened just enough for June to tackle Sue free, both of them tumbling to the ground. The battle continued in close quarters, the confined space of the mine chamber working both for and against them. The Dracari couldn't use their full speed, but neither could the humans establish a clear firing line. Then, a commanding voice cut through the chaos. "Enough of this absurdity. Director Han stepped into the chamber. He looked mostly human still, but his eyes had changed to vertical slits, and patches of scales were visible at his neck and hands. He moved with the fluid grace of a Drakari while maintaining his human voice. "Park," he said, addressing June directly. "You've shown remarkable adaptability. The Drakari consulate values such traits. Surrender the luminary specimens, and you'll be rewarded with a position in the new order." "What new order?" June demanded, keeping his rifle trained on his former boss. Han smiled, revealing teeth that had grown sharper. "Earth has resources the Drakari Empire finds valuable. Most significantly, its diverse biosphere and adaptable species. Like yourself, a formal integration is already being negotiated with certain of your world governments. Those who cooperate will prosper." "You mean those who help you enslave other species," Minna said, her mental voice projecting so all could hear. "As you've done across 12 systems already." Han's expression hardened. "The strong guide the weak. It is the natural order of all worlds." "Return our property, human," the largest Drakari hissed, stepping beside Han. "These females contain genetic sequences worth more than your entire planet." June exchanged a quick glance with Minna. This was the moment they had planned for. "Now," he whispered. Minna, Sue, and Yuna joined hands, forming a triangle. Their luminescence intensified, the colors blending into a brilliant white light. The Drakari recoiled, raising their arms to shield their sensitive eyes. At the same moment, the captured Drakari communication device that June had modified began emitting a powerful distress signal, not just to human authorities, but a specific frequency that the luminary had assured him would reach far beyond Earth. "What have you done?" Han snarled, his partly transformed face contorting in rage. "Told the truth," Jun said simply. "To everyone." The light from the luminary coalesced into a concentrated beam that struck the communication device. Suddenly, the air in the chamber seemed to ripple as a holographic projection filled the space. Images of Drakari ships attacking the luminary homeworld, of collection facilities where various alien species were held captive, of secret meetings with human officials. All the knowledge the 3 refugees had carried was being broadcast. The projection wasn't just in the mine. Through the modified transmitter, it was being sent to military and civilian communications networks across the region. "Any word on the Drakari movements?" Joan asked. Lee's expression darkened. "Our deep space monitoring stations have detected signals consistent with their ships, just beyond Mars orbit. They're keeping their distance for now." "They're assessing," Jum said, remembering what Mina had taught him about Drakari tactics. "Looking for weaknesses, deciding if we're worth the trouble or not." "And are we worth the trouble?" June smiled slightly. "According to our friends, we're putting up a better united front than most species they've encountered." The public broadcast of their activities damaged their reputation among some of the neutral powers in this arm of the galaxy. The general looked skeptical. "I still find it hard to believe there's a whole galactic community out there that we knew nothing about." "That's by design," Yuna said, approaching them quietly. Her luminescent patterns glowed a soft purple today, reflecting her thoughtful mood. "The Drakari and others like them prefer to harvest developing worlds one at a time. Isolated targets are easier to control." General Lee bowed slightly to Yuna, still uncomfortable but making an effort to show respect. 6 months was not long enough to completely adjust to conversing with beings from another world. "The President wants to know when the defense technology will be ready for implementation," Lee said after an awkward pause. Yuna and June exchanged glances. "The knowledge transfer is complicated," June explained. "It's not just about giving you advanced weapons. The entire system requires a different approach to physics than what Earth scientists currently use. We're teaching your scientists to think differently first," Yuna added. "Then the technology will make sense." Lee nodded stiffly. "I'll relay that to my superiors." Again. After the general departed, June and Yuna walked through the sanctuary's main chamber where dozens of scientists, both human and luminary, worked together at stations combining Earth technology with alien concepts. The atmosphere was one of cautious collaboration, with occasional moments of brilliant breakthrough. "He fears we withhold information," Yuna observed. "He fears many things," Jun replied. "That's his job." They passed through a security door into the residential wing of the facility. Here, the environment had been modified to more closely resemble the luminary homeworld. The lighting was softer, with crystalline structures that refracted light in patterns that were somehow soothing to the alien refugees. 17 luminary now lived in the sanctuary. After the initial contact had been established, other escape pods had been discovered around the globe. Each contained survivors with their own harrowing stories of escape from Drakari captivity. In the central garden area, designed with plants that approximated those from their lost world, Mina and Sue sat with several human children. The educational exchange program had been controversial but ultimately approved. The children, selected for their adaptability and open-mindedness, were learning the luminary language and culture directly from the source. "And that is how light speaks," Mina was explaining, demonstrating how her luminescent patterns changed with her thoughts and emotions. The children watched, fascinated, as ripples of color flowed across her skin. Sue noticed June and Yuna entering and excused herself from the group. She approached with a small crystalline object cupped in her hands. "For you," she said, placing it in June's palm. "Our first gift of many. It contains medical knowledge that will help your people." The crystal was warm to the touch and seemed to pulse gently with inner light. June knew that when placed in the specialized readers they had developed, it would transfer vast medical knowledge, cures for diseases that had plagued humanity for centuries. The council approved the medical knowledge transfer. June asked, surprised. The Luminary Council of Elders, the 7 oldest refugees, had been cautious about sharing technology too quickly. "Some gifts cannot wait while politics unfold," Sue said simply. "Too many suffer needlessly." Jun carefully secured the crystal in a protected pocket of his uniform. "Thank you. This will change millions of lives." "You changed ours first," she reminded him, her silver eyes meeting his directly. Over months of working closely together, Jun had learned to read the subtle shifts in her luminescent patterns. Today, they spoke of gratitude and something deeper, a connection that transcended their different origins. Mina finished with the children and joined them, her own patterns bright with satisfaction. The young ones learned quickly. They ask better questions than most of your scientists. "Children adapt faster than adults," Jun said. "They haven't yet decided what's impossible." They walked together through the garden, a sight that would have seemed impossible just 6 months earlier. A human and 2 aliens conversing as colleagues, perhaps even friends. "The Drakari ships are moving closer," Jun said quietly, knowing they needed to be informed. "General Lee confirmed it today." Mina nodded, unsurprised. "They will not attack directly. Not yet. They first will try to undermine your unity, find those willing to betray others for advantage. Like they did with Director Han," Jun remembered. The former Wildlife Containment Division director was now held in a special containment facility, his partial transformation neither progressing nor reversing. He refused to speak to anyone, but occasionally left cryptic warnings about the coming change. "We have time to prepare," Yuna assured them. "In all the futures I can see, direct conflict is still distant." They reached the observation deck, a reinforced glass ceiling that offered a view of the night sky above the mountain facility. Stars were beginning to appear as dusk settled over the peaks. "Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if any other agent had checked that trap," Jun said, gazing upward. "If someone had followed protocol instead of listening to you." Mina's patterns shifted to a contemplative blue. "Perhaps the universe arranged for us to find the one human who would see beyond appearances. Or perhaps I was just bad at following rules," Jun suggested with a small smile. "A fortunate flaw," Sue said, gently touching his arm. The gesture had become familiar between them, a bridge between species who expressed connection differently. As night fully descended, they stood together watching the stars. Stars that now held new meaning for all of them. Somewhere out there, the Drakari Empire continued its expansion. But for the first time, one of their targeted worlds had been warned in advance. Earth was preparing, united by the knowledge that they were not alone in the universe, for better and for worse. "Not bad for something I caught in a monster trap," Jun said quietly. "The trap was set for monsters," Minna replied, her mental voice warm with affection. "But what you found instead was simply beings desperate for freedom and willing to fight for a new home." As lights from the facility below reflected against the glass, Jun saw their three reflections standing together, different in appearance but united in purpose. The former hunter had become the bridge between worlds, all because he'd recognized that sometimes what looks alien isn't monstrous at all, just desperate for freedom. And now, that freedom would be defended together.